To Ivan Sterling, Paris Fashion Week was the ultimate playground, a place to flaunt his wealth and parade his 23-year-old mistress, Chloe, before the world's elite. He boarded his private jet, believing his wife, Catherine, was safely tucked away at home, nothing more than a quiet accessory to his loud life. But Ivan's arrogance blinded him to the truth. He wasn't just flying to a fashion show, he was flying into a trap. The luxury brand he was desperate to hostilely take over was secretly owned by the very woman he had underestimated for years. Catherine wasn't oblivious. She was the architect of the entire event, and she was ready to bring the curtain down on him. The silence in the Sterling estate was not peaceful. It was heavy, like a velvet curtain soaked in water. Catherine Sterling sat at the head of a mahogany dining table long enough to land a small aircraft on. At the other end sat her husband, Ivan. Ivan Sterling was the kind of man who checked his reflection in the back of a spoon. At 52, he was the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, a private equity firm that stripped companies for parts. He was handsome in a predatory way. Silver fox hair, veneers that cost more than a luxury sedan, and a suit cut so sharp it could draw blood. "I'll be in Paris next week," Ivan said, not looking up from his phone. His thumbs moved frantically, likely texting someone named Chloe, or Sasha, or Destiny. Catherine knew better than to ask. "Paris?" Catherine asked, her voice calm. She took a sip of her Pinot Noir. "Fashion Week is starting. Are you suddenly interested in haute couture, Ivan?" Ivan scoffed, finally glancing at her. He looked at Catherine with a mixture of boredom and mild pity. At 48, Catherine was still striking. High cheekbones, ice-blue eyes, and the posture of a retired ballerina. But to Ivan, she was invisible. She was the woman who managed the staff, organized the charity galas, and kept his life running. But she wasn't the thrill. "It's business. Blissfully boring business," Ivan laid smoothly. "I'm looking into acquiring a logistics firm based in Lyon. I just happen to be flying into Charles de Gaulle. I won't have time for sightseeing." "A logistics firm," Catherine repeated, "in the middle of the biggest cultural event of the year. Don't start, Catherine. You know how the market is. I have to be aggressive." He stood up, buttoning his jacket. "I'll be staying at the Peninsula. Don't wait up." He walked out without kissing her. He didn't see the faint, cold smile that touched Catherine's lips as the heavy oak doors slammed shut. He didn't know that 3 hours earlier, Catherine had received a call from Henri Dubois, the creative director of Maison Dubois, one of the most prestigious, exclusive fashion houses in Paris. "Madame Sterling," Henri had whispered over the line. "The collection is ready. The board is anxious. But the front row, we have a request from a Mr. Ivan Sterling for 2 VIP seats. He is listed as a potential investor for the acquisition talks." Catherine had swirled her wine, looking out over the manicured gardens of their Connecticut estate. "Approve the seats, Henry. Put him in the front row, Sector A." "And the guest?" Henri asked. "He has registered a +1, a Miss Chloe Vane." Catherine didn't flinch. "Give them the best seats in the house, Henri. I want him to have a perfect view. I want him to feel like the king of the world. And you, madame? Will you be in the owner's box?" "No," Catherine said. "I'll be closer than that." Ivan thought Catherine was spending her inheritance on flower arrangements and aggressive philanthropy. He had no idea that 10 years ago, when he was busy bankrupting a tech startup in Silicon Valley, Catherine had quietly used her family trust, money Ivan had no legal access to bail out a struggling French atelier. That atelier was now Maison Dubois, currently valued at 3 billion euros. Catherine wasn't just an investor. She was the silent majority shareholder. She was the ghost in the machine, and Ivan was about to fly his mistress right into a spiderweb. The interior of the Gulfstream G650 was scented with sandalwood and leather. Chloe Vane kicked off her Louboutins and curled her legs up on the cream-colored seat. She was undeniably beautiful, 23, with hair the color of spun gold and an Instagram following that rivaled a small country's population. She was an influencer, which mostly meant she was professional at looking expensive on other people's dimes. "Ivan, look," she squealed, holding up her phone. She was live streaming. "Guys, we are literally on the way to Paris. Fashion Week, baby. Daddy is taking me to see the Maison Dubois show." Ivan winced slightly at the word daddy, glancing at the pilot cabin to make sure the door was shut. "Chloe, put the phone away. Discreet, remember. We are here for business." "You said we were here to party," she pouted, dropping the phone but keeping it recording. "Besides, nobody follows you. You're old. My followers just think you're my manager." Ivan sighed, pouring himself a scotch. He looked at Chloe and felt a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. She was his trophy. Walking into the show with her was going to turn heads. He wanted his competitors to see him, virile, powerful, with the hottest woman in Paris on his arm. He convinced himself he deserved this. Catherine was fine. But Catherine was reality. Chloe was a fantasy. "I have meetings during the day," Ivan told her, adopting his CEO voice. "I'm trying to buy a stake in Maison Dubois. If I pull this off, I'll own a piece of the most iconic brand in France. It's the crown jewel." "Does that mean I get free bags?" Chloe asked, eyes widening. "It means I get richer, Chloe, and yes, you get bags." Ivan felt like a titan. He had done his due diligence, or so he thought. He knew Maison Dubois was privately held. The ownership structure was opaque, hidden behind a web of holding companies in Luxembourg and the Cayman Islands. He assumed the owner was some reclusive French aristocrat or a faceless conglomerate. He was prepared to bully them with cash. He was Ivan Sterling. Everything had a price. He opened his laptop to review the dossier on Maison Dubois. Projected Q3 revenue, €450 million. Creative Director, Henri Dubois. CEO, Jean-Luc Picard, acting. Primary shareholder, redacted. Represented by Pegasus Holdings. Pegasus Holdings, Ivan muttered. "I'll break them." Meanwhile, 30,000 feet below, Catherine was boarding a commercial flight. Air France, first class. She preferred commercial for this. Private jets left flight logs that Ivan's assistants could track. She wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf that covered her hair. She looked like any other wealthy European widow. Next to her sat her personal attorney, a sharp-featured man named Sebastian Vance, no relation to the prohibited names, just a sharp lawyer. "The papers are ready for the reveal?" Catherine asked, her voice low. "Executed and notarized," Sebastian replied, tapping his briefcase. "The moment the show concludes, we trigger the clause. Ivan is trying to buy 15% of the company through a shell core to bypass regulatory scrutiny. He thinks he's negotiating with Henri." "He thinks Henri is desperate for capital," Catherine said, sipping sparkling water. "He thinks the brand is over-leveraged." "Is it?" "On paper," Catherine smiled. "I made sure the last 2 quarterly reports looked concerning. I wanted to draw the sharks, and Ivan can smell blood from across the Atlantic. You're baiting your own husband into a hostile takeover of a company you own," Sebastian noted, shaking his head with admiration. "That is diabolical, Catherine." "He humiliated me, Sebastian. For 3 years I've known about Chloe. I've known about the apartment in Soho. I've known about the business trips to Cabo." Her voice didn't crack. It hardened. "He used my family connections to get his start in New York, and then he treated me like furniture. I don't just want a divorce. I want him to understand exactly who he was sleeping next to all these years." She looked out the window at the clouds. "He wants to buy Maison Dubois? I'm going to sell it to him. But the price won't be money." Back on the private jet, Chloe was bored. She started scrolling through Ivan's iPad, which he had left unlocked on the table while he went to the bathroom. She opened his email, looking for confirmation of their hotel suite. She wanted to know if it had a view of the Eiffel Tower for her TikTok. She saw an email subject line, Sterling Divorce Strategy. Her eyes went wide. She clicked it. It was from Ivan's lawyer. Ivan, we recommend holding off on filing until after the fiscal year ends. If you blindside Catherine now, she might freeze the joint assets. Keep her happy until January. Chloe smirked. He is actually going to leave her, she thought. I'm going to be the next Mrs. Sterling. She didn't tell Ivan she saw it. She just sat back, sipping her champagne, dreaming of the ring. She had no idea that the joint assets Ivan was worried about were peanuts compared to what Catherine actually owned. The plane began its descent into Paris, the City of Lights, or, in Ivan Sterling's case, the City of Lights Out. The Hotel Plaza Athénée is a fortress of luxury on Avenue Montaigne. Red geraniums spill from every balcony, and the lobby smells of amber and old money. Ivan walked in like he owned the place. He was wearing a navy Tom Ford suit, sunglasses on indoors. Chloe trailed behind him, wearing a white tracksuit that was too tight and dragging a Louis Vuitton trunk that was too big. The concierge, a man named Pierre, who had worked there for 30 years, stiffened imperceptibly. He knew Mr. Sterling, but he adored Madame Sterling. Catherine stayed here twice a year, alone, usually under her maiden name, Blackwood. Pierre was one of the few people who knew Catherine was the silent patron behind the renovation of the hotel's west wing. "Check in for Sterling," Ivan barked, slapping his black card on the marble counter. "Presidential suite." "Bonjour, Monsieur Sterling," Pierre said, his face a mask of professional polite indifference. "And Mademoiselle." "Vane," Chloe corrected, snapping her gum. "Chloe Vane. Of course." Pierre typed into the computer. "Monsieur, I see your reservation. However, there is a slight complication with the presidential suite." "Complication?" Ivan's voice rose. "I booked this 2 months ago. There was a maintenance issue, a leak. We have moved you to the Eiffel suite. It is slightly smaller, but very charming." "This is unacceptable." Ivan slammed his hand on the counter. "Do you know who I am?" "I do, monsieur. I demand the presidential suite. It is occupied, monsieur, by a VIP guest who booked the entire floor for security reasons." Ivan fumed. Who is more VIP than me?" Pierre paused. He looked Ivan dead in the eye. "I am not at liberty to say, but the guest is a major stakeholder in Maison Dubois." Ivan froze. The very company he was trying to buy. If the owner was here, in this hotel, this was his chance. He adjusted his tie, his anger instantly transforming into scheming opportunism. "I see." Ivan lowered his voice. "Well, if you happen to see them, send them my regards. Tell them Ivan Sterling is in the building." "I will certainly convey the message," Pierre said. As Ivan and Chloe stormed off to the elevators, Chloe complaining about the smaller 2000 square foot suite, Pierre picked up the phone. He dialed the presidential suite. "Madame Sterling," Pierre said softly. "The Eagle has landed." And he brought the Sparrow. In the presidential suite, Catherine was standing on the balcony, overlooking the Eiffel Tower. She was wearing a silk robe from the unreleased Maison Dubois collection. "Thank you, Pierre," she said. "Did he take the bait? Hook, line, and sinker. He thinks the owner is staying here. He will likely try to make contact." "Good. Let him sweat tonight. Tomorrow is the pre-show gala. I want him tired and desperate." Catherine hung up. She turned to the room. Sitting on the velvet sofa was Henri Dubois, the legendary designer. He looked exhausted, but electric. "He's here?" Henri asked. "He's downstairs," Catherine said, "with the mistress." Henri made a face of disgust. The man has no taste. How can he appreciate my designs if he doesn't appreciate you? "He appreciates value, Henri, not art," Catherine said, walking over to a dress mannequin in the corner. It was covered in a black sheet. "Is this the finale piece?" "It is," Henri said. "The revenge dress. We made it to your exact measurements." Catherine ran a hand over the fabric beneath the sheet. Tomorrow night at the gala, I will remain anonymous. I will wear the mask, as we discussed. I want to meet him. I want to hear him pitch his acquisition to my face without him knowing it's me." "It's risky, Catherine," Henri warned. "He knows your voice. He knows your scent." "He hasn't really looked at me in 5 years, Henry. He sees what he expects to see. If I am not wearing an apron or organizing his calendar, I don't exist to him." Catherine walked to the mirror. She pulled her hair back severely. She applied a dark, blood-red lipstick, a shade she never wore around Ivan. She looked dangerous. "Tomorrow," she whispered to a reflection. "The game begins." The pre-show gala was held at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, a wing of the Louvre that smelled of champagne and history. The theme of the night was shadows and light. It was a masquerade, a tradition Henri Dubois had reinstated to allow the ultra-wealthy to mingle without the interference of the paparazzi, who were kept behind velvet ropes at the entrance. Ivan Sterling adjusted his domino mask. It was black leather, sleek and uncomfortable. Beside him, Chloe was wearing a pink sequined mask that clashed violently with her dress, a revealing mesh number that left very little to the imagination. In a room full of understated French couture and avant-garde structural pieces, Chloe looked like she had gotten lost on her way to a Las Vegas nightclub. "Ivan, this music is weird," Chloe complained, tugging on his arm. An ambient orchestral remix of a techno track thrummed through the hall. "Can we go to the VIP area? I want to see if the Kardashians are here." "Quiet, Chloe," Ivan hissed, scanning the room. "I'm not here for celebrities. I'm here for the money men. The rumor is that the primary shareholder of Maison Dubois is here tonight, a representative from Pegasus Holdings. You're always working," she whined, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing tray and downing it in one gulp. "I'm going to find the bathroom. Don't go anywhere." She wandered off, her phone held high, recording a story for her followers. Ivan felt a wave of relief the moment she was gone. He straightened his tuxedo jacket and waded into the crowd. He worked the room with the efficiency of a shark in a tuna pen. He shook hands with banking heirs and tech moguls, dropping hints about his upcoming acquisition. He felt invincible. He was Ivan Sterling, the American wolf in Paris. "Monsieur Sterling?" A voice cut through the noise. It was low, husky, and vaguely familiar, though distorted by the ambient bass of the music. Ivan turned. Standing near a pillar, shrouded in shadow, was a woman. She wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue velvet that shimmered like the night sky. Her face was obscured by an intricate silver filigree mask that covered everything but her eyes and mouth. Her hair was swept up in a complex, architectural chignon. "I am," Ivan said, stepping closer. "And you are?" "I represent the majority interest in Maison Dubois," she said. Her English was flawless, but she adopted a precise, clipped cadence that stripped away any recognizable accent. "I was told you were looking to buy us out." Ivan's pulse quickened. This was it. The connection. "I am looking to take Maison Dubois to the next level," Ivan said, flashing his practiced smile. "The brand is stagnant. It relies too much on heritage. It needs American aggression. It needs scale." The woman tilted her head. Her blue eyes, piercing, icy, locked onto his through the mask. "Stagnant? We had a 30% growth in Asia last quarter." "Paper gains," Ivan dismissed, stepping into her personal space. He wanted to intimidate her with his presence. "You have a cash flow problem. I know about the debt structuring. You need a liquidity injection, or you won't survive the next fiscal year. I'm offering you a lifeline." "You are offering a takeover," she corrected. "You want to strip the assets, sell the real estate, license the name to sell cheap perfume in duty-free shops." "I want to make it profitable," Ivan laughed. "Sentimentality is for artists. Business is for men like me." "And what does your wife think of this philosophy?" the woman asked suddenly. Ivan blinked. The question caught him off guard. "My wife?" "Catherine Sterling," the woman said. "She is known for her philanthropic approach, her love of the arts. Would she approve of you gutting a historic French fashion house?" Ivan scoffed, taking a sip of his drink. "Catherine? Catherine thinks equity is a type of horse riding. She has no head for business. She spends her days arranging flowers and hosting tea parties. I keep my business very separate from my home life." "Is that so?" The woman's voice dropped an octave. It sounded dangerous now. "She sounds manageable." "She's invisible," Ivan said, feeling loose, feeling powerful. "She's a relic of a different time in my life. Frankly, once this deal goes through, things might change on the home front, too. A man of my stature needs a partner who matches his vitality." He glanced in the direction Chloe had gone. The woman in the silver mask followed his gaze. "I see. The young woman in the pink sequins. That is the vitality you seek." "She has energy," Ivan shrugged. "Look, are we doing this deal or not? I have the papers drawn up. I can have a check ready by morning." The woman stepped forward. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume. It was Santal 33 and bergamot. Ivan frowned. That was Catherine's scent. But half of Paris wore Santal. It was a coincidence. "Come to the show tomorrow, Ivan," she whispered. "Front row, Sector A. We will make our announcement then. If you like what you see on the runway, we will sign." "I love a dramatic closing," Ivan grinned. He reached out to shake her hand. She wore black silk gloves. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Until tomorrow," she said. She turned and vanished into the crowd, moving with a grace that left Ivan staring after her. He felt a strange shiver go down his spine, a primal warning he chose to ignore. He found Chloe 20 minutes later. She was arguing with a waiter because they didn't serve vodka Red Bull. "Come on," Ivan said, grabbing her elbow. "We're leaving. I just closed the deal of the century." "Did you get me a gift bag?" Chloe asked. "I got us a kingdom, Chloe." As they exited the gala, Catherine Sterling stood on the balcony above, watching them leave. She removed the silver mask. Her face was pale, her expression stony. "He called me a relic," she said to the empty air. "He called me invisible." Sebastian Cole, her lawyer, stepped out from behind the curtain. "He signed his own death warrant, Catherine. The board is briefed. Henri is ready. The trap is set." Catherine crushed the silver mask in her hand until the metal bent. "Invisible," she repeated. "Tomorrow, I'm going to be the only thing he sees." The venue for the Maison Dubois Fall-Winter Show was the Grand Palais. It was a cavernous, glass-domed wonder, transformed for the event into a dystopian garden. The runway was black obsidian, flanked by twisted iron trees and fog machines, pumping out a low, eerie mist. The atmosphere was electric. This was the most anticipated show of Fashion Week. Rumors had been swirling all morning about a new direction for the brand. Ivan and Chloe were ushered to their seats by a nervous-looking assistant. "Right this way, Monsieur Sterling," the assistant said, bowing low. They were led to the very center of the front row, Sector A, the best seats in the house. To their left was the editor-in-chief of Vogue. To their right, a famous Hollywood actress. Ivan sat down, spreading his legs, owning the space. He checked his watch. "Showtime in 5 minutes," he told Chloe. Chloe was busy taking selfies. "The lighting in here is terrible," she muttered. "It's too moody. How am I supposed to show off my outfit?" She was wearing a neon green mini dress that Ivan had bought her that morning. In the sea of fashion editors, wearing all black and avant-garde neutrals, she looked like a highlighter pen dropped in a coal mine. The Vogue editor glanced at her, raised an eyebrow, and turned away. "Put the phone down," Ivan snapped. "The show is starting." The lights went out. The room plunged into total darkness. The chatter died instantly. A deep, thumping bass beat began to play. It mimicked the sound of a heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. Spotlights slashed across the runway. The models began to walk. The collection was aggressive. Sharp shoulders, blood-red leathers, structured corsets that looked like armor. It wasn't the soft, romantic Maison Dubois of the past. It was war paint. The theme was clear: retribution. Ivan watched, nodding. "Yes," he whispered. "This is marketable. This is sexy. I can sell this." He was mentally calculating the profit margins on the leather jackets when the music shifted. The heavy techno faded into a haunting, orchestral piece, a violin solo that was both beautiful and melancholic. The finale. Usually the models would do a final walk, followed by the designer, Henri Dubois, taking a bow. But the models didn't come back out. Instead, the giant screen behind the runway flickered to life. A video began to play. It was a montage of documents, corporate filings, bank transfers. Ivan squinted. What is this? Some kind of art statement? The text on the screen was massive. Acquisition target, Maison Dubois. Prospective buyer, Sterling Dynamics. Ivan froze. His company name was on the screen. He smiled nervously. "They're announcing it," he thought. "They're announcing my takeover." He started to half-rise from his seat, ready to wave. But then the text changed. "Status, rejected." The crowd gasped. Ivan dropped back into his seat. The screen flashed red. "Reality. Hostile takeover attempt detected. Defense protocol. Activated. Ownership reveal." The screen went black. A single spotlight hit the top of the runway. The silhouette of a woman appeared. She was wearing the revenge dress, a sleek, floor-length black gown with a neckline that plunged daringly deep, covered in thousands of black crystals that caught the light like jagged glass. It was the most powerful, regal thing anyone had ever seen. She began to walk. The walk was confident, predatory. Her heels clicked against the obsidian runway, echoing through the silent hall. She walked all the way to the end of the runway, stopping exactly in front of Ivan and Chloe. The woman slowly lifted her chin. Ivan's breath stopped. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He blinked, sure he was hallucinating. It was Catherine, but it wasn't the Catherine he knew. It wasn't the wife who made casseroles and organized the linen closet. This was a titan. Her makeup was fierce, her posture commanding. She looked 10 feet tall. She looked down at Ivan, her eyes cold and dead. Then she reached for a microphone that rose from the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Catherine's voice boomed through the speakers. It was the same voice from the masquerade. "Welcome to the new era of Maison Dubois." She paused, letting the silence hang. "For years, this house has been silently funded by a single investor, an investor who believes in art, in integrity, and in loyalty." She looked directly at Chloe, then back to Ivan. "Recently, a predatory firm, Sterling Dynamics, attempted to buy this house. The CEO, Mr. Ivan Sterling, believed he was negotiating with a desperate board. He believed he could strip this company for parts." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones were raised. Flashbulbs erupted like lightning. Ivan felt sweat trickling down his back. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. "Mr. Sterling," Catherine said, addressing him directly. The spotlight widened to include him in her glare. "You told me last night, at the masquerade, that your wife was invisible, that she was a relic. Oh, that she had no head for business." The crowd gasped. The Vogue editor's jaw dropped. "Well, Ivan," Catherine smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. "I am the majority shareholder of Maison Dubois. I own the runway you are sitting next to. I own the chair you are sitting in. And I own the company you tried to destroy." She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "And as of this morning, my attorneys have filed for divorce. They have also frozen all joint assets, pending an investigation into the misuse of marital funds for business trips like this one." She gestured to Chloe. "I hope you enjoyed the show, Ivan. It's the last thing you'll ever see from the front row." Catherine dropped the microphone. Thud. She turned on her heel and walked back up the runway, the black crystals on her dress shimmering like armor. The silence held for 1 second. Then the crowd erupted. Not in polite applause, but in chaotic, roaring shock. It was the viral moment of the century. Ivan sat there, paralyzed. His face was pale grey. Chloe looked at him, her eyes wide. She looked at the crowd, then at the retreating figure of Catherine. She did the math instantly. Ivan was broke. Ivan was humiliated. Ivan was over. Chloe stood up. "You said you owned the place," she screeched, her voice shrill enough to be heard over the commotion. "You said you were the king." "Chloe, sit down," Ivan croaked. "You're a loser," Chloe yelled. She grabbed her fake Louis Vuitton bag. "And you're old." She stormed off, pushing her way through the paparazzi, who were now swarming toward Ivan. Ivan Sterling sat alone in the front row, bathed in the harsh light of the spotlight, as the world realized the man who thought he was a giant was actually just a very small man standing in his wife's shadow. The walk from the plush velvet seat of the Grand Palais to the heavy glass exit doors was less than 100 yards, but for Ivan Sterling, it felt like walking the Green Mile. Inside the auditorium, the shock had been a physical blow, a silence so heavy it crushed the air out of his lungs. But outside? Outside was a different kind of violence. The moment Ivan pushed through the doors and onto Avenue Winston Churchill, the world detonated in a flash of white strobe lights. He had expected a few photographers, the usual Fashion Week parasites looking for a shot of a hemline. Instead, he was met with a wall of noise. A legion of paparazzi, tipped off by the live stream that had just broken the internet, surged forward like a tidal wave. "Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling! Is it true the company is insolvent? Did you know your wife was the buyer? Ivan, look this way! Give us a smile for the bankruptcy court!" The questions were jagged, overlapping, shouted in a mix of French and English. Ivan instinctively raised a hand to shield his eyes, blinded by the relentless popping of flashbulbs. He felt like a deer not just in headlights, but in the crosshairs of a firing squad. He turned to his left, reaching for Chloe's arm, needing an anchor. "Chloe, keep your head down. We need to find the car." His hand grasped only air. Ivan spun around, disoriented. Chloe Vane was 5 feet away, but she wasn't cowering. She was standing perfectly still, bathed in the chaotic light of the cameras, checking her reflection in her phone screen. She adjusted the strap of her dress, angled her chin down, and looked directly into the lens of the nearest paparazzo. "Chloe!" Ivan hissed, lunging toward her. "What are you doing? We have to go!" She sidestepped him with the agility he didn't know she possessed. She looked at him, and for the first time Ivan saw her clearly. The vapid, adoring gaze was gone. In its place was the cold, hard calculation of a survivor. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice loud enough for the reporters to hear. "Get in the car," Ivan pleaded, sweat stinging his eyes. "We'll go back to the hotel. I can fix this. It's just a stunt. Catherine is just... she's acting out." Chloe let out a laugh, a sharp, cruel sound. She held up her phone. "Ivan, look at Twitter. You're not a CEO anymore. You're a meme. You're trending as # the invisible husband, and I am not going to let you drag me down with you." "I bought you that dress!" Ivan screamed, his composure finally snapping. "I bought you the earrings. I paid for this trip. Consider it severance," Chloe snapped. She turned to the wall of cameras, her face shifting instantly into a mask of tearful victimhood. "I didn't know!" she shouted to the press, her voice trembling theatrically. "I had no idea he was married. He told me he was separated. I'm a victim here, too." "You liar," Ivan roared, stepping forward, but a burly bodyguard, one of the venue's security staff, shoved him back. "Step back, monsieur," the guard grunted. Ivan watched, helpless, as Chloe was ushered into a waiting taxi by a photographer who seemed all too happy to help her escape. She didn't look back. She left him standing on the curb, surrounded by jeering strangers, in a suit that suddenly felt like a costume for a play that had been cancelled. He had to get away. He lowered his shoulder and ploughed through the crowd, ignoring the microphones jamming into his face. He ran past the Petit Palais, down the dark streets toward the Seine, until the shouts of the paparazzi faded into the distant hum of traffic. He stopped under a street lamp, gasping for air, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. His phone was vibrating in his pocket, a constant, buzzing drill. He pulled it out. Battery, 12%. 47 missed calls, 102 text messages. He ignored the texts. He dialed the one number he thought could save him. Marcus Thorne, his CFO, the man who knew where the bodies were buried because he had helped Ivan dig the graves. "Marcus," Ivan choked out as the line connected. "Thank God. Listen to me. It's a disaster. Catherine staged a coup. She's claiming ownership. You need to release a statement immediately. Tell the press it's a hostile entity. Tell them, Ivan, stop." The voice on the other end wasn't the deferential tone Ivan was used to. It was flat, metallic. "Don't tell me to stop, Marcus. I sign your checks." "Not anymore, you don't," Marcus said. "I'm currently in a conference room with the board of directors and a team of auditors from Deloitte. Do you know what we're looking at, Ivan?" "We can explain the accounts," Ivan stammered, a cold dread seeping into his stomach. "The liquidity providers watched the show, Ivan," Marcus continued, ignoring him. "Citibank, J.P. Morgan, the private lenders in Zurich. They all saw Catherine Sterling declare war on you. They triggered the material adverse change clause in our credit agreements 5 minutes ago. They're calling in the loans, all of them, tonight. They can't do that. We have 30 days to cure." "Not when there's fraud involved," Marcus said quietly. Catherine's lawyers sent over a dossier right after the show ended. It's extensive, Ivan. The withdrawals from the charitable foundation, the consulting fees to the shell companies in the Caymans. She has the receipts. She has the IP addresses. She has everything. Ivan leaned against the cold stone of a building, his legs giving way. He slid down until he was sitting on the dirty pavement. "Marcus, you have to help me. We're in this together." "No," Marcus said. "We aren't. I just cut a deal with the DOJ and Catherine's legal team. I'm cooperating. I'm resigning effective immediately, and I'm handing over the hard drives." "You traitor," Ivan whispered. "You were sloppy, Ivan. You got greedy, and you underestimated the one person you should have feared. Don't come to the office. Your keycard has been deactivated. Goodbye." "No." The line went dead. Ivan stared at the phone until the screen went black. He was alone in Paris. No company, no mistress, no ally. He checked his banking app. Access denied. Contact branch. He checked his corporate Amex app. Account suspended. He had 40 euros in his wallet. He stood up, his knees shaking. He had to get to the hotel, the Plaza Athénée. He had a suite. He had champagne. He could sleep, and maybe when he woke up, this nightmare would have dissolved into a manageable headache. The walk took an hour. He arrived at the hotel blistered and sweating, his tie undone, his hair wild. He pushed through the revolving doors, desperate for the cool, scented air of the lobby. He didn't make it 5 steps. Pierre, the head concierge, a man who had bowed to Ivan for 10 years, a man Ivan had tipped hundreds of euros just to feel superior, stepped into his path. He was flanked by 2 security guards who looked like they were carved out of granite. "Mr. Sterling," Pierre said. His voice was polite, but his eyes were filled with a profound, professional disdain. "Pierre," Ivan panted, "get me a water, and tell housekeeping to turn down the bed. I've had a hell of a night." "You are not a guest at this hotel, monsieur," Pierre said. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm in the Eiffel suite. I'm a diamond member." "The reservation was under Sterling Dynamics," Pierre informed him, clasping his hands behind his back. "We received a call from the corporate office cancelling the account due to suspected criminal activity. The card on file has been declined." "I have personal cards," Ivan shouted, reaching for his wallet. "We ran them," Pierre said softly. All of them. Declined. 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 The lobby had gone quiet. Guests in tuxedos and evening gowns were staring. Ivan felt the humiliation burn his skin like acid. "My things," Ivan whispered. "My luggage, my watch collection. It's in the safe." Pierre signaled to one of the guards. The man reached behind the concierge desk and produced 2 items, a clear, heavy-duty plastic trash bag and a garment bag. "We packed your personal effects," Pierre said. "However, the hotel is exercising its right to hold your luggage and valuables as collateral for the unpaid incidental charges from the last 3 days. The champagne, the room service, the spa treatments for Mademoiselle Vane. It adds up to 12,000 euros. Pierre kicked the plastic bag slightly toward Ivan's feet. "This contains your toiletries and a change of clothes. I suggest you leave before I call the gendarmerie. They are very interested in speaking with you regarding the disturbance at the Grand Palais." Ivan looked at the plastic bag. Then he looked at Pierre. "I tipped you," Ivan said, his voice trembling. "I tipped you every time." "You threw money at me, monsieur," Pierre corrected. "There is a difference. Madame Sterling, she asked about my children. She remembered their birthdays." "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." The guards took Ivan by the elbows and physically escorted him out. They didn't throw him, but the force was firm, unyielding. The revolving door spun, depositing him back onto the cold street. He wandered for hours. He couldn't afford a hotel. He couldn't afford a taxi. He eventually found a hostel near the Gare du Nord train station, a place where backpackers and drifters slept on bunk beds. It cost 35 euros a night. He paid with the cash in his wallet, leaving him with enough for a croissant and a coffee. He lay on the thin, lumpy mattress in a room that smelled of stale beer and damp wool. Above him, a stranger snored rhythmically. Ivan stared at the ceiling, waiting for the anger to come, waiting for the rage that usually fueled him. But there was no rage, just a hollow, echoing terror. He closed his eyes and saw Catherine's face on the runway. The coldness of it. She hadn't just beaten him, she had erased him. 3 days later. The flight back to New York was a blur of misery. He had to beg his college roommate, a man he hadn't spoken to in 5 years, to buy him an economy ticket using frequent flyer miles. Ivan sat in the middle seat of row 42, wedged between a crying toddler and a man eating a tuna sandwich. He wore a baseball cap pulled low, terrified someone would recognize him. When he landed at JFK, he turned on his phone for the first time in 2 days. The avalanche had settled, but the landscape was destroyed. The news cycle had moved from shock to analysis. The legal pundits were having a field day. CNN, the Sterling Ponzi, how one man looted a charity to fund a fashion fantasy. Bloomberg, Maison Dubois valuation soars as Catherine Sterling takes the helm. He walked through the terminal, head down. He couldn't go home. Catherine had undoubtedly changed the locks on the Park Avenue penthouse. The doormen there were loyal to her. They would probably enjoy tossing him onto the sidewalk. He took the subway to Queens, to the sublet his friend had arranged. It was a basement studio with bars on the windows. He sat on the sagging sofa, surrounded by the silence of his new life. He picked up the legal packet that had been served to him at the airport by a process server who had been waiting at baggage claim. It wasn't just a divorce petition. It was a civil RICO lawsuit, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Catherine wasn't just suing him for the house. She was suing him for running a criminal enterprise. The sheer volume of evidence listed in the appendix was staggering. Dates, times, wire transfers. August 12th. $50,000 transfer from Sterling Foundation to C. Vane Consulting. September 4th. Private jet charter billed as Logistics Survey. Passenger manifest. Chloe Vane. She had known. She had known the whole time. Every time he lied to her about a business trip, she had been tracking the money. She had let him dig the hole deeper and deeper, waiting for the moment he was so far down he could never climb out. A knock on the door made him jump. He opened it a crack. A courier stood there. "Ivan Sterling?" "Yes." "Message from Sebastian Vance." Ivan took the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of stiff, expensive paper. "Mr. Sterling, your presence is requested at the former offices of Sterling Dynamics. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Do not bring a lawyer. You cannot afford one. We have a proposal. It is your only alternative to federal prison." Ivan stared at the note. His hand shook uncontrollably. He walked to the tiny, dirty window and looked out at the brick wall of the adjacent building. He realized then that he had never been the genius behind his success. He had been the front man, the mascot. The real power had been sitting across the dinner table from him for 20 years, quietly eating her salad, while he ignored her to text his mistress. He crumpled the note in his fist. He would go. He would crawl if he had to, because the wolf he thought he was had just realized he was trapped in a cage with a lioness. Ivan wore his last clean suit. It was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. He took the subway to the office building he used to command. The receptionist, a young woman he had never bothered to learn the name of, looked at him with open pity as she buzzed him in. He walked into Boardroom A. The view of the Manhattan skyline was breathtaking, a view he used to think he owned. Catherine sat at the head of the table. She looked immaculate in a cream-colored power suit. She was reading a file and didn't look up when he entered. Sebastian Vance sat to her right. To her left sat Henri Dubois, the designer, looking smug. "Sit," Catherine said, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table, the spot usually reserved for junior associates. Ivan sat. "Catherine, save it," she said, finally looking at him. Her eyes were clear, devoid of the love that used to be there, but also devoid of anger. She looked at him like he was a bad quarterly report. "We are here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Sebastian slid a thick document across the long table. "This is a settlement agreement," Sebastian said. "It stipulates that you agree to an uncontested divorce. You waive all rights to spousal support. You waive your claim to the penthouse, the Hamptons estate, and the Aspen Lodge." "That leaves me with nothing," Ivan argued weakly. "I built this company. I have equity." "You had equity," Catherine corrected. "But since the stock price plummeted 80% in the last 72 hours, your equity is worthless. Furthermore, the board has voted to dilute your shares to cover the debts you incurred." She leaned forward. "But here is the grace I am offering you, Ivan. If you sign this, I will drop the embezzlement charges regarding the foundation. I will pay back the money you stole from the charity out of my own pocket. You will not go to jail." Ivan slumped. Jail or poverty? Those were his choices. "What do you get out of this?" Ivan asked, bitterness seeping into his voice. "You already have everything." "I want your name," Catherine said. "My name? The company?" She pointed to the logo on the wall. "Sterling Dynamics. I am rebranding it. It will be absorbed into Maison Dubois Global. I am erasing the name Sterling from the business world. You will be the last of your kind." She paused, then added the final twist. "And one more thing. The logistics firm in Lyon you were trying to buy? The one you lied to me about?" "What about it?" "I bought it this morning," Catherine smiled. "It turns out their supply chain is perfect for distributing Maison Dubois worldwide. You were right about the business strategy, Ivan. You were just wrong about who the boss was." Ivan picked up the pen. His hand shook. He looked at the woman he had underestimated for 20 years. He realized now that her silence hadn't been submission. It had been observation. She had been studying him, learning his weaknesses, preparing for the day he went too far. He signed the paper. "Good," Catherine said, standing up. She didn't offer a handshake. "Security will escort you out." "Catherine," Ivan said, stopping at the door. He turned back, looking small and broken. "Did you ever love me? Or was this a long con?" Catherine looked at him, and for a second her mask slipped. A flicker of sadness passed over her face. "I loved you enough to build you a pedestal, Ivan," she said softly, "but you loved yourself enough to jump off it." She turned back to Henri. "Let's discuss the spring collection." 6 months later. The billboard in Times Square was massive. It featured the new campaign for Maison Dubois. The image was striking. A woman in a tuxedo, wearing a silver mask, holding a gavel. The tagline read, "Own your narrative." Below, on the busy street, Ivan Sterling adjusted his name tag. "Welcome to Tech Implant Solutions. How can I help you?" He was working the floor at a mid-level electronics retailer. No private equity firms would hire him. No boards would touch him. The only job he could get was in sales, earning a commission on extended warranties. A young couple walked up to him. The girl was looking at her phone. "Oh my God," she whispered to her boyfriend. "Look at this guy. He looks just like that dude from the Invisible Wife documentary on Netflix." The boyfriend laughed. "No way. That guy was a millionaire. This guy is selling printers." Ivan tightened his jaw. He looked at the billboard of Catherine towering over the city. She was watching over New York, powerful, acclaimed, and free. He turned back to the customers, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I interest you in the accident protection plan?" Ivan asked. "You never know when everything might crash." And that is the story of how Ivan Sterling lost a fortune trying to chase a fantasy, only to realize the reality he left at home was the true power player. It's a brutal reminder. In the game of life and business, the person who talks the least is often the one listening and planning the most. Catherine didn't just get mad, she got ownership. If you enjoyed this story of high fashion revenge and corporate karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs a reminder to never underestimate the quiet ones. I'll see you in the next video.